creator, is directed by Gareth Edwards and stars John David Washington, Allison Janney, and among others. And this story is set in the far future where you have humans essentially in conflict with these artificial intelligent machines that have sparked this ongoing conflict for a while that's been happening after some stuff that basically went down after a nuclear explosion happened from back that I won't reveal too much detail on, but essentially it deals with John David Washington's character Joshua, who has to go after this weapon, as the military calls it, in order to essentially stop that holds the key that essentially reveals to be this little girl that is a artificial intelligence machine who holds the key on ending the war, as she is the ultimate weapon. And along the way, he has to basically question his morality on whether he is joining on the side of the military or the human race, or having to, join the machines. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Gareth Edwards, who I've seen a couple of his films that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and I also enjoyed Godzilla from 2014. I haven't seen his other film he did called Monsters, but I heard it was really good. But after seeing Godzilla from 2014 and also Rogue One from 2016, I could definitely see that this director has a lot of great visual vision in mind with how he presents these kind of epic type of sci-fi films, and having to present it in the very visually appealing with both of them. And going into the trailers for this movie, I could see that this was definitely going to be an interesting take of just going off of it, of what it was trying to do with incorporating the subject of AI, as it has been an ongoing topic for a while with how we use in technology nowadays with with art and the ongoing strike that happened with Hollywood and everything. And also with it being a concept with a film that's trying to, be familiar in other areas while also not based on anything. It is interesting that we get these kind of sci-fi movies that try to at least do its own original story and not being based on any existing property. And that is very rare to find these days, because almost everything is a reboot or based on a book or anything like that. And coming to find out that this movie was actually purely original, it made me interested, but it also kind of went into just, moderate expectations, because I didn't have really high hopes for it, but I still, went into it with just open-minded. And after upon seeing the film, I can say that while it is a likable movie, and I definitely give a lot of credit to what Edwards is definitely trying to do with the subject matter and having a lot of great ambitious feel of it, I did feel like to its advantage, it kind of lacked some things that held it from being great, but I still thought it was at least a visually stunning and likable film. And so to get my pros out of the way, I will say that the performances in this were really fantastic. John David Washington, I've always really enjoyed as an actor, and from what I've seen him in, from what I remember, from what I've seen him in other films like Tenet, and from what I've also heard that he's really good in BlacKkKlansman, it definitely shows that the guy is a really great actor and where he's coming from. And with him being the son of Denzel Washington too, it just shows that he's really trying to, go on his own way with not really trying to be in the shadow of his dad and stuff. And here he really shines, and not only in the action department, but also in the emotional scenes where it carries with him and the girl. And the little girl that's played by Madeline Voyos. I'm sorry if I can't get her name right, but she did a tremendous job. And with this being her first movie ever that she's done, she not only knocked it out of the park with a lot of the stuff where she's having to be emotional at times, but just the human feeling that they give her throughout this film, where she resembles human but still has the machine-like qualities and stuff. She really pulled it off, and I really enjoyed her chemistry with John David Washington's character. And the strength that it goes through with Joshua having to go, on his journey to protect the little girl and stuff. While I'll get to some of my cons with it with a little bit of how I prefer it in other films, I still went along with where it was going, and I could see, and the dynamic that the two share was really, touching at times. And the abilities that they give her I thought was interesting, with how she can pretty much turn machines and other stuff on and off and things like that. And so that was great. And then one of the other biggest praises, most surprisingly, is the visual effects in this. For a movie that costs only about $80 or so million, it's really fascinating how a movie like this that costs way less than some of the other films I've seen with pretty bad CGI that costs $200 or $300 million can really look as really stunning and very appealing with how they work with it. Because apparently, from what I've read, was that Gareth Edwards actually shot the film first and waited for the effects to be basically added into to basically utilize in the visual effects later. And I think I did read something about where he actually previously has worked on visual effects himself, and so you could definitely tell that he had a vision in mind with making the robots and the other artificial intelligence look very authentic looking. And they definitely remind me of like old school James Cameron Terminator vibe, with it kind of being very practical looking. But also when they utilize the CGI, especially when you see some of the beams and stuff, like when they're shooting missiles down, it looks fantastic. And the scale that they were able to accomplish this movie with going on actual on-set locations and stuff, especially in parts of Asia, I thought was really great, and it definitely gives you that kind of epic feel. And, there's also some humorous parts that I thought was really interesting. Like, you'll have an action scene that's going on, and I'm not going to go into detail, but there's a part, let's just say, that involves a dog. And I just really like the aftermath of what happens, because it's nothing bad or anything that happens to the dog, but just the way that it involves with this scene, it just really, I thought, really cracked me up in that part. And then some of the humor that they throw in here with when the certain lines that some of the characters say, I thought were kind of funny, especially a part where where Alfie, as she's called, is saying a certain thing or something, she's translating, and just the way that she says it, I thought was really funny in one part. And so that was great. On top of that, I also felt like the movie, where the movie was going with the whole like artificial intelligence resembling humans and stuff, I thought was a really unique concept with how they were able to make it to where they're trying to coexist and stuff like with the humans. And that definitely reminded me of something off of Detroit Become Human, where much like in that game too, you have a plot going on where the machines are basically trying to live in peace and have their freedom and stuff like that. And so I could definitely see the vibes going that they may have had some influence on. And also, there's also a section in this film that definitely reminds me of that, where, not going into too much detail, but let's just say that there's a part where the humans are able to essentially take a dead robot and essentially put a dead soldier's mind into the robot to make it temporarily turn on. I thought that was really unique, and I think that had the movie would have gone into more places with that approach, it probably would have expanded on some stuff more. But with that being said, though, I did feel like the movie does have some issues that kind of held it back quite a lot. To get my comments away, I will have to say that as much as I was, interested with the concept of what they did with, the humans having to, with the whole using the artificial intelligence, it really felt like there was a lack of nuance in this, where it really is just like going your typical, bad humans are bad and AI is good guys approach, like you've seen in other films and a lot of other countless sci-fi stuff, where it's trying to be, going into that, where basically in this, the actual machines, they don't really do anything to make them really like branch out into doing actual machine type level stuff, because if anything, they resemble just humans, and they're really just trying to, live their life like they are, and that there happens to be a twist that they reveal later that I can't spoil, but you can definitely see where the movie's going as it does become a little bit predictable. On top of that, it really felt like the climax felt a little bit short, because we get into the third act that takes place, and while there is some interesting action that takes place here and there throughout the movie, it gets into a resolvement where it comes with the villains and stuff, and I felt like the way it was just resolved was a little too fast, and it really seemed like there was so much more they could have put more detail in or made it more epic. On top of that, it really felt like the way that they develop some of the other characters, like Allison Janney's character. You also have this other friend that John David Washington's character comes to meet later. I feel like the movie probably could have spent more time with these characters to really add some more layers. And I think it would have been probably better if it would have been maybe a mini-series or something that you would see on Disney Plus or Hulu. Because from what I also heard was that Gareth Edwards essentially had like a 5-hour cut, but it was obviously cut for reasons. And I think if it eventually gets like the Zack Snyder's Justice League treatment, there's a whole lot of great more world building that they could have really explored a lot more with, and really fleshed out a lot more of the characters with on that level. Especially some of the dynamic that we see with Alfie and Joshua, that I think that really could have explored just in some other certain areas. And while it does get into some really good emotional beats, especially toward the end and stuff, it does feel like the movie comes across as a little bit more hollow in some areas that definitely made me feel like there's more to it than what it could have been. And so there's that. And then another thing too that I was kind of bothered with was that there are instances where some of these explosions that happen here and there do feel a little bit repetitive at times, where it's almost like they keep repeating the same like action scenes throughout, and it really felt like they could have maybe changed it up, or in one part later they could have actually took more advantage of using certain missiles when an event calls for it. But overall, though, I will say that will stand by and say that Gareth Edwards at least tried to make a good, original type of sci-fi level. And while it does use a lot of other familiar works, mainly a lot of what you've seen with movies like Logan or even Spielberg's artificial intelligence AI, that I thought used the whole like child in person on the run and stuff. I thought utilized that concept a lot better. But that's not to say that they at least had a lot of the ambition that was going for it. And so overall, I still commend it for at least, giving us original films like this. But sadly, it just really felt like it could have been a whole lot better for me. And so with that, I'm going to give the film an extremely high average Joe on the Film Freaks meter. So for those of you who have also seen The Creator, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.